A wooden gate can finish off a fence nicely, as well as giving you a bit of added privacy around the house. Plus, it's great for keeping the kids safe. I'm going to show you how easy it is to build a nice sturdy wooden gate yourself. For this gate, we'll need enough timber for the gate frame. There's 2 sides, 3 rails, and a diagonal support brace. There's timber for the palings, then 3 hinges and a gate latch. Now, one of the first things we need to work out is what side of the fence you're going to hang your gate off. Now, I've decided I'm going to hang my gate off this side here, and I'm going to open it outwards. So what we're going to see is the knuckle of the hinge, which is this big round barrel-y part, is going to be sitting on the outside. So if you can see the knuckles of your hinge, that means that's a right-hand hung gate on the right there. Now, if I was going to open this gate outwards and this hinge is going to be on that side there, that'll be a left-hand hung hinge. So nice and simple. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is measure the distance between our 2 posts. Now, we make sure that we measure top and bottom, just so if they're not parallel, we're going to have to take the smallest of our 2 measurements. Now, at the top, I have 922, and down the bottom, we've got 922 as well. Okay, so our gap is 922 millimetres wide. Now, we are going to have to take off a little bit off that measurement just to allow for the gate to sit in there nicely without jamming on the sides. So what I'm going to also do is measure the width of our hinge with it closed like that. That's approximately 8 millimetres. Now, I'm not actually going to check in or chisel in to our post in the side of our gate to have these hinges sitting nice and flush. What I'm going to do is have these hinges sitting on the top. The reason for that, if these gates were to move a little bit later on, that just gives me a little bit of scope down the line to check those in and pull the gate over nice and level if I need to later on. So I've got 8 millimetres of hinge. I'm going to take that off our 922, plus I'm going to allow another 8 millimetres on that side. So that's a total of 16 millimetres I'm going to take off our 922, and that's the width that we're going to make our gate. Rightio, now that we've got the width of our gate, the next thing we need to do is measure the height that we're going to make our gate frame. So what I've decided to do is just to measure what we've already got here on the existing fence, so to keep all our gate rails exactly the same. So when we stand back and look at it, everything's nice and aligned. So if I hook my tape down the bottom there and measure to the overall, I got 1526. And 697 to the underside of my rail. Now, the type of timber that I'm going to be using is a 75 by 50 or 3x2 if you will. Now, it's tannalised and it's kiln dried. The great thing about using kiln dried timber is it's not going to twist or warp. Now, I've got my nice little plan here that we've taken all the dimensions off our fence. So I've got all of my dimensions worked out already. I'm going to take that over the saw. I'm going to put a square cut on each end. Now, on each end of those square cuts, I'm going to do a rebate. Now, this is a rebate. This is going to make our join super strong. Now, measure and mark all 5 pieces and put a nice square cut on each end. Now that I've cut all my 5 pieces, I now need to put this rebate on the end. To do that, it's pretty simple. First thing we have to do is measure the width of our timber. My particular situation, I've got 44 millimetres wide, so I'm going to mark 22. And I'm just going to use a pencil and my finger, create a finger gauge. It's going to give me a nice straight line there. Let's just square that all the way around. And I'm going to take out this top piece here. So now that we know how much we're taking out, we also need to know the width. So let's just put an off-cut of timber on the end, mark that. Let's make it really clear to ourselves exactly which piece we're going to be chopping out. Now, to create a rebate like this, I'm just going to use my drop saw. On the side of the drop saw, I've got this nice little rebate switch. I can flick that over, and I've got a screw here which allows the blade to be set at whatever height I like. Now, I've got my mark set on my piece of timber that I want to be rebated. Now, I'm just going to bring my drop saw down, and all I'm going to do is just wind the screw so it's approximately 1/2 millimetre off our line. And now we're just going to lock our little wing nut in there just to make sure our height adjustment screw doesn't move on us. Boom. Now just before we rip into it, I'll put a piece of timber across the back here just to bring the saw, so we're making sure that the saw travels all the way through nice and clean on our piece of timber. Okay, that's looking pretty good. If you find there's any little dags hanging on the back there, you might just want to clean that up with a chisel. Nice sharp chisel. That's looking pretty good. And just test, just to make sure that's all sitting nice and lovely. Excellent. Now you just want to repeat the process for all the other ends. Now all my timber is rebated out and it's just about ready to go. What I'm going to do next is just do a dry fit, which purely means assembling the whole thing without any glue. Now I've just got it sitting in a pair of sash clamps. That's just got to squeeze the whole thing together. It's not imperative that you do use those, but it is pretty handy. Now that's all sliding together quite nicely. Now just before we glue it up, let's measure our diagonals. 1777, and we just want to make sure that our diagonals are sitting exactly the same. 1777. We still have a little bit more adjustment before we put our screws in, but let's just get it within cooey now. Now everything's looking really good. Next step is mixing up some 2-pot glue and applying that on our joins. We're using 2-pot glue to reinforce the joins because it's a lot stronger than other glues and it's waterproof. Okay, so what I'll do now is just tighten that sash clamp up just a little bit. Make sure they're all hard. Now, let's just pre-drill our ends. Going to come in about 20 millimeters. And I'm just using a 40 millimeter stainless steel square drive screw. Rightio, let's just double check our diagonals before we screw the whole thing off. 1777, 1773. 1774, 1774, lovely. Now we're only going to need 2 screws on the end because effectively the screws are just there until the glue goes off. Lightly hammer the joint together to ensure it sits flush. Next step is installing our brace. Now, this is the top of our gate, so on this side here, I'm going to be installing our hinges. So what that means is, I'm going to put my diagonal brace from the bottom of the gate up to the top. So that allows, when all the weight comes on the gate, all that weight's going to transfer down onto our nice secure post where the hinges are. Now, to do that, I've marked a centre line on the end of our brace, and I've marked the centre line on the other end. I'm just going to use the brace as a straight edge for now. I'm just going to put that right in the corner and that corner down there, and I'm just going to transfer that mark all the way along. That allows me to clearly see where the centre of our gate is. Now if I lay this flat, put our centre mark of our brace on that line. Now we'll just make sure that's on our centre line down here. Great, so what we're going to do now is mark the underside of our brace, and we're going to cut that to that angle on either end. Now for our middle here, what I'm going to show you how to do is rebate out the centre two pieces here, just using our circular saw. So we're just going to mark with a nice sharp pencil exactly where they intersect. And let's just tell ourselves, I'm going to be chopping out the bottom of this one and the top of that one, just to make it really clear for ourselves. And we'll also need to mark the underside of the brace, top and bottom. Okay, now it's time to cut our rebate for our centre brace. Now, let's just set our circular saw to the just shy of that depth. Lock that off. That's probably about 1/2 mil away. That's looking pretty good. Now, just before you rip into it, just take your time. You don't want to muck this up. Now just use a nice sharp chisel, follow your pencil lines, and then snap all your fins out. Cool, that's looking pretty tidy. Now all we have to do is the other rebate on the diagonal and then chop our ends. So apply a liberal amount of glue as you did the rest of the frame, and then once this goes in, we will pre-drill the ends and screw it in place. Now I might just use a clamp here just to squeeze this up nice and tight. Lovely biscuits. Rightio, the last thing we need to do is attach our screws through the ends of our brace. Now I've got these 100 mil long galvanised screws. I'm just going to pre-drill a hole. Now pre-drilling the hole is just purely so the timber doesn't split. Fantastic. Now let's do exactly the same down the other end. Now all I'm going to do is just tidy up the excess glue and then just let it dry overnight. The glue's set, so time for a little tickle up with the sander. Now that's all looking really nice and tidy. All my joins are sitting nice and flat. Next thing I have to do is give it a quick lick of primer. Cool, that's looking really good. Now let's just head back over to our fence and get all our measurements for our palings. The distance from the top of the rail to the top of the paling is 92 millimetres. And the gap between each paling is approximately 10 millimetres. Now I've already pre-cut all our palings. Now this timber that I am using is actually already pre-primed, but because I've already cut the ends, I've also put some primer top and bottom. Now let's take our 92 millimetre measurement, and we're just going to make sure that that paling is sticking above the top of our gate, 92 millimetres. And I'm just going to fix on one paling on either side of the gate for now. Now because I am going to be painting this fence down the track, what I've decided to do is just to drive those screws a couple of millimetres under the surface of the timber so I can bog straight over top of them. Okay, so I've cut the rest of my palings and I've laid them down nice hard up against each other. So I'm just going to measure the gap that's left, and I've got 94 millimetres. So I've got 7 palings here. That'll give me 8 gaps. So if I take 94 and I divide that by 8, that gives me about 11.75 millimetres. So now if you remember down on our fence line, we were measuring around about between 10 and 11 millimetres. So that's going to make our gate and our fence match really nicely. So I'm going to go back to my saw. I'm going to cut a whole lot of little packers at about 11 millimetres to slip in between our palings. Okay, all our packers are in. They're all sitting there nice and tight. Okay, now I've put a level just on the top of our gate, and I've pushed all our palings hard up to it. That's just to ensure that we're going to get a nice straight line across the top. So the next thing is running a straight line across there and just throwing our screws in. Okay, now just to repeat the same process for the other 2 rails. Now the type of hinge that I've decided to use is this 4-inch broad butt hinge. This will allow me to get past our paling and get direct fixing straight into the frame of our gate. But if you didn't want to use these, you could use this nice little simple T-hinge which just laps straight over the top of the gate. That kind of gives you a little bit more of a country sort of rustic look. I've decided to go with these because it's a little bit more of a classy, nice, tidy, minimalistic look. Right, the position I'm putting my hinge is going to be flush with the top of our gate, and all I'm going to do is just bend the hinge 90 degrees so that top part sits hanging over there, flush with there, and I'm just going to drill those in. Now, there is a right and wrong way to put these hinges on. So you'll see that there's 5 parts to this hinge. We've got 3 on one side here on the leaf, and we've got 2 on this side on that leaf. So the 3 side of our hinge here, that'll go onto our post, and the 2 side of this part of the leaf, that'll go onto our gate. So with our centre hinge, let's just line that up. So that's sitting in the middle of our rail. And once again, using our stainless screws to fix that in place. Rightio, we're just about ready to screw our hinge on. Now, I've thrown a few packers underneath the front of my gate, and I've got a spade here which I can stand on. That'll give me my exact height up and down. So I'm also just going to use my ruler as a straight edge, and going off the top of my gate, that's sitting nice and flush with the top of our fence. Now, so we're just about ready to screw our hinge in. Let's just make sure that the leaf of the hinge is sitting flush with the face of our fence. So what I'm going to do first is just put 1 screw at the top of the hinge and then 1 screw in the bottom of the bottom hinge. So now just put on all the screws in the hinge and we're just about there, ready on the gate. Rightio, all our screws are in. Now what we can do is take out our spade and take out our packers, see how our gate's looking, and now we're just about ready to put on our gate latch. Oof. Now that's looking absolutely superb. Next thing is throwing on our gate latch. What I have selected here is one that's got a little handle that's accessible from both sides. So I can shut the gate here, but also open it from the back side. So that'll just slip over the top. And I've got the little lever strike here. That'll sit on top of the gate and just close quite nicely like that. Easy as. Now you can just fill the holes and then you're ready to paint. Done. you've got yourself a solid gate that'll keep the kids in or the mother-in-law out. It won't take you long and it won't cost the earth.